One of the key aspects of full spectrum preparedness and full spectrum homesteading is cognitive, mental, and spiritual. And today we're going to talk about the cognitive aspect of preparedness. And that's your ability to think and the knowledge that you have and the skills that you have. There's a saying in the prepper community, knowledge weighs nothing. And the idea behind that is, should you have to up and leave everything behind, all the knowledge and skills that you have up in your head, you can take with you, and they don't weigh a thing. They will not slow you down, and they will only benefit you in the future. If we've gone through the prepper phase and we've gone to the prepping 2.0 level, like Glenn and Shelby Tate call it, or we have graduated to the homesteading level, we might want to start thinking about building a library. Because I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of time gathering as many basic survival skills and knowledge as I could. And unless you're a very exceptional person, you can't learn it all. So today, we're going to talk about building your homestead or bug out library. Stick around. Morning, everybody. Welcome back to Grumpy Acres. Like I said, today we're going to talk about the cognitive aspect of preparedness, and specifically building a library. So like I said, you know, no one person can learn everything. It's just, it's the very rare person that can soak up that much knowledge. So what we want to do is we want to build a library of books and manuals and stuff that can help us when we need it. Now, I don't know about you, but in our case, space is limited and finances are limited. I don't know if you've priced books recently, but they can be expensive. Man, I was shocked last time I was looking at some books. So we want to think about how we can do it on a budget and how we can do it without taking up an inordinate amount of space in our house or a bug out location or wherever. You know, and the smaller your space is, the more important it's going to be to weed out books that really don't do you any good, right? Books that you may find interesting, but in the long run, they're not going to benefit you. So here's some ideas that I've got. First off, we've already said why we need a library, right? Now we need to figure out what we want in that library. First and foremost, don't let anybody, including me, tell you what you should have in your library. The books that go into your library should be books that you will find beneficial, you will find useful, and it's going to vary person to person. So, like in our library, we've got basic homesteading books, we've got tactical books, we've got construction manuals, we've got cookbooks. Down here where you can't see, we've got an entire row of medical resources. Back behind me, we've got gardening books, a whole row of military and history books, and then there's a lot of empty space on these shelves because I can't find all my books or all my boxes with all the books in it. So that's going to be one of my projects over the next month or so, is to find all my books and get them in here. But as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different subject matters that we can cover. The cookbooks, you know, you might think it's crazy to have so many cookbooks. I mean, there's a good 10, 15 cookbooks here, and we've got more that can fill up the bookcases in the living room. Yoda finds them very practical. Yoda finds them very useful, and she'll come in. She's got some staples that she keeps in the kitchen by the stove, but she'll come in here and she'll grab these books from time to time, and she'll look up recipes or she'll look up techniques and she'll use them. The medical books, you know, any survival or homestead library should have medical books in it. What books you find interesting is up to you, but you know, if we're on an isolated homestead or if you're at your bug out location, you need books to help you take care of any medical problems you may have. Now, you're not going to be an expert unless you're a doctor, you know, but you can learn enough to maybe keep somebody alive until you can find a doctor, you know, and if you've taken some training and stuff, it's all good. You can use your reference library to up your game. right? Some other considerations when you're figuring out what you want in your library. You know, the three books that I would have in my library, any library that I build, I would have a Bible, I would have a dictionary, and I would have a good road atlas. And I'm going to add a fourth one. I'm going to add a fourth one just because of the way I feel is a pocket constitution. So those are the four books that I would have in my library. Now the road atlas, you know, you can pick a good one up on eBay, or I'm sorry, Amazon for $20-30 bucks. You know, and I've got the Rand McNally 2020, and it's a big book. It's not one I'm gonna be schlepping around with me, but if I have to plan a trip and I don't have access to Google Maps, it's a great reference. Here we go. We've got, this one is Angela's Study Bible. It's a women's study Bible. I would have, we've got in ours, we've got that one, and we've got a King James version, which is my favorite version, and then we've got an annotated study Bible, which helps us learn more, you know, because we're not theologians and we don't know everything about it, so we need some help. Now, if you're not Christian, get the book of your choice. We've got the Torah here. You know, there's a children's Bible here. But having one of those at the very least. The Pocket Constitution, kind of self-explanatory, and then a dictionary. You know, one of the things that strikes me about the difference between present times and back in, say, the mid-1800s is how well-spoken people, even people of lower class, were well-spoken. And you could see it in the letters that they wrote. It was very important for them to know the meaning of words and be able to write intelligently. You know, and there's a joke out there that I saw. It said, I don't know what the present generation is going to write about history, but I know it's probably going to be full of misspellings. So, you know, having a dictionary is important. Now, personally, I want an older version, one that's maybe, it's 2022, one that's maybe 10 years old, that does not have all the woke stuff in it that Webster started putting in it, and they started changing definitions. I got a real problem with that because words have meanings. So, but it's up to you. It's up to you. Find the books. Figure out what books you want. All right. Now, if you're an avid reader like me, you go through a ton of books, and we don't want to break the bank in the process of getting these books, right? There are several different ways that we can go about getting books for our library, making sure that they're ones that we want in the library and we need in the library. The easiest way, the way that everybody has access to, if you live in the United States, you have access to this. So libraries, public libraries are a fantastic way to vet books. What I would do is I would go through and I would read all the articles and all the commentary about, oh, you need this book, you need that book, and then I would jump on the public library search website, see if I could find it. So like in the state of Missouri, they've got what's called the Evergreen system, and every single public library and school library in the state is tied into this system, and it's a searchable database, and you can search for a title or an author or a subject, and you can find a book. And then you can have it sent to your local library, and you can check it out, and you can read it, and you can figure out if you liked it. I did that. A lot of these gardening books back here, and a lot of the I don't have them here. A lot of the medical books. There's that, and then I've got a whole fiction section of fantasy, sci-fi, and prepper fiction. You know. I would get those books and I would read them and I'd figure out if I wanted them. You go to the library and you can get these books, read them, vet them, and decide if you want them. And then you can go out and pay full price for them if you want. I like books in hardback if I can get them, and those cost more than paperback. So sometimes I go ahead and I spend that money because they're going to last longer if they're in hardback format. Books that are in paperback, you know, the spines get broken, the covers get torn. Hardcover books just seem to last longer. You know, so there's a good way to do it. And if you're concerned about a collapse, and this is going to sound kind of weird, and you can't afford books, here's what I would suggest doing. This was my plan. I have not done it here because I've been so busy doing other things. I would constantly request books through the system, and your state's probably got something like the Evergreen system too, where all the public libraries and schools in your state are tied into this. But I would request these books that I wanted in my library, and you can only do like 3 at a time in the Evergreen system. But I would request these books, and I would check them out and check them back in, and sometimes those books would sit at the public library for months on end. And my thinking was, if things go south and I can't afford the book, if it's still at the library whenever something happens, I can just go to the library and get it. You know, I can check it out for the library, or, you know, if it's a complete collapse, you know, it might be there for salvage. You know, so it's just something to think about, okay? So there are ways. You know, another way to get inexpensive books, half-price bookstores, used bookstores. I say half-price. There's a chain of bookstores called Half-Price Books, and if you go online, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you've got access to all the half-price bookstores across the country, and I think they're in almost every state. But if you go to the local half-price bookstore, you can find some really good deals. So this series right here, this is the Time Life Home Improvement series. They're basic books. They've got, you know, they cover all the different aspects like adding on kitchens and bathrooms, advanced masonry, porches and patios. You know, and they're not master level books. But back in the day, these things were like $12, $15 a piece, and you bought them one at a time as part of the set. I found this at the half-price bookstore in Independence on clearance for $1 a book. So I literally paid $18 for this entire collection, and they're great books. You know, I'm not a carpenter by trade, and I'm not a home improver by trade. Well, I'm becoming one. I'm learning how to do it. But this is a great reference material for whenever you're doing something like that. You know, so use your half-price books. Go to used bookstores. You can find all kinds of used books. A lot of my science fiction and fantasy books have come from used bookstores and thrift stores. You know, and that's one thing that I really missed over the last year, is I would take a Saturday once a month, and I would drive into the city, and I would go to all the thrift stores, and I would be looking for things we could use around the house and on the homestead. And I would also peruse their books. And I found some really good books at inexpensive prices, you know, at pennies on the dollar, literally. Another thing you can look for books, publishing houses that are going out of business. So this right here is there's a lot of tactical manuals in here. The Paladin Press was a publishing company that did a lot of tactical stuff, a lot of historical books, you know, and really obscure material. And they were in business for a long time, but they went belly up 5 or 6 years ago. I was able to get these books at pennies on the dollar. I mean, I've probably got the Paladin, and there's more here. There's more spread out, but these 6 or 7 Paladin books right there. If I were to buy those brand new, that would have been $150, $200. I think I paid, gosh, I got like 15 titles for about $60. You know, and these are good books. You know, I've got long range precision rifle shooting, which is something I enjoy. A couple of tactical manuals by Gabriel Suarez, who was one of the premier instructors back in the 80s, and they're really good basic level books, you know, to get you an introduction into it. Now, there's even a book here that I bought, Home Workshop Silencers. You know, I'm not out building silencers, but I think it would be a good skill to have, you know, in the event that I want to make one and get one registered, or if things happen where that's not an issue anymore and we can build our own, you know. that would be a good book to have. And it's something I find interesting too. So there's a way to do it. Find publishing houses that are going out. Another way to get good material for your library is anthologies. Now here, hang on a second. So I don't know if you're familiar with, let's see if I can get it on it. There we go. Backwoods Homes. It's a magazine, and they put out yearly anthologies of all their magazine articles. And this one covers their 22nd year. Fantastic resource of all sorts of different homesteading topics, and actually a lot of these bleed over into the preparedness community and the bug out, for your bug out location. So these are a great way to get resource materials. Another series, if you can find it, is the Foxfire series. Fascinating story there, tragic. There's a little tragedy at the end of it. Kind of turns a lot of people off to it. But again, it's a fantastic wealth of knowledge that was passed on from older generations to newer generations back in the 70s. And it's still around. And if I remember correctly, they've got the Foxfire projects going on in like 18 countries now. So it's not only wisdom passed on by folks in America, it's generational wisdom from other countries as well, which is just awesome in my book. So there's a way to do it. You can find these anthologies, and sometimes it's cheaper to buy the anthology for that year than having a subscription. So I enjoy the magazines. I enjoy getting the magazines. So we keep the magazines in the library too. Normally they're down on the bottom shelf. Right now the bottom shelf is full of junk because I haven't been able to find the book with the magazines in it. But those are a great way to get a lot of knowledge really in one compact form and inexpensive. Another way to get books for your library is training manuals. Now right here, it's a little worse for wear. I don't know if you can read that. This is the Red Cross Swimming and Aquatic Safety Manual. This is my study book from whenever I became a water safety instructor back in the 80s. Yes, I was a lifeguard and water safety instructor. You go to these classes and you get these certifications. I've got these. I've got some IT stuff that I keep on hand as a reference for work. Now, I'll be honest with you, if things go belly up like we're afraid they will, the IT material will probably get tossed out and to make room for other stuff on the bookshelf. But they're great ways of getting good basic material for your library. I can go back and brush up on my instructor skills and all that, and I could teach somebody how to swim again. So I could do that if I wanted to. Another way, and this is now we're going to get a little more kind of obscure here, some more obscure ways. So when I worked for the DoD, I had access to every single Army field manual that TRADOC put out. TRADOC is the Training and Doctrine Command, and they're in charge of training the United States Army. And so I had access to that, and so I was able to get a hold of, I got a hold of some books like, they had the Radio and System Operators Handbook. They had a whole bunch of those that they were tossing out. And so I grabbed them, but I've also got PDF format manuals of things that I found interesting and I thought might help. And so my thought was I can print those off in a PDF format, and I can put them in a spiral-bound notebook or a spiral-bound book, and I can stick them in the library when, if I've got the time and the resources to get them printed off. So you've got that. The Marine Corps used to have what's called the Marine Corps Institute, and it was a long-distance learning program. And the way it worked was you had to take these courses for promotion, to get promotions. So you got points for each course. And the way it worked was you would sign up for a course. They would send you a study book. You would study the book, and then you would take a proctored test. Well, the book stayed with you. It was yours. Those were throwaway books. but the library that they had for these courses were everything from basic math to college level military courses. And so I kept a lot of those. I would keep those at my various duty stations, and as I went on leave, I would bring them home and I would stick them in a box. So I've got usually one of the entire bottom rows of these bookcases is nothing but NCI courses. Now, the NCI does not exist anymore. They changed the name to, if I remember correctly, I'll look it up. I'll put the link down below, and I'll put the link for like half price books and some of these other things down below for you too. It's called the Marine Corps Long Distance Learning Program, if I remember correctly. Same exact concept, same exact material. It's just a different name and a different command now. But you can do it if you're a member of any uniformed service in America or foreign country that's an ally of the United States. If you're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, you have access to this system, and you can get the books. And like in my collection, I've got math for Marine, basic math for Marines, which it's basically a 6th grade math book. Every Marine Corps Institute book at the basic level is written for a 6th grade education. So they've got that. They've got writing for Marines, finance for Marines. I've got several tactical books. I've got a M60 service and a deployment book. It's been ages since I made a real range card. But if I wanted to, I could pull that book out off the shelf, flip through it, find the part where they talk about making a range card, and within 10 minutes, I could brush up on how to do a range card properly and go out and do it on the outside. So it's a good way to do it, and it's not just military subjects. It's a very vast and wide-ranging thing. Another way to figure out what books you may want in your library is reading lists. There are trade organizations and such that put out reading lists for their members, and they're like, okay, these are the books that we suggest you read so that you become knowledgeable on our trade. And there's a whole bunch of them out there, and you can get online, you can look them up for your whatever specific skill set you're looking for. One of my favorites is the Commandant's Reading List. The Commandant of the Marine Corps back in the 80s, they started a reading list, and what they did was they broke it up by ranch, and it's books that will help build leaders. And it's not necessarily history books or military books, like Ender's Game, which is a science fiction book, is one of the first books that's on that list, because it's a great read on building a leader. And it may be a fiction book, maybe a science fiction book, but it's still Orson Scott Card did a great job of doing that. So it's meant to build a well-rounded leader. So that's one of my favorites. But you can find it for all kinds of trades. And I know it sounds kind of funny, but yes, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was not in it for the money. I was not in it for the education. I was in it because I wanted to be a professional military person. And there's a huge difference between a professional and somebody that's in it for those other reasons. But anyway, so there's a way to get it. Another way you can get it is a lot of places will get these books and they'll use them and then they become outdated and then they just throw them away. Here's a great example. Okay, so this one is on the medical shelf, and this is the physician's desk reference. And what this is, it's a list of every single FDA-approved drug on the market. This one is from 2013. And hospitals get these for free. So if you know anybody that works in a hospital, chances are they can get a hold of these books. Now, it may be out of date because they update it every year for all the new drugs that come out. So that one's 2013. So any drugs in the last 10 years that came out is not in this. But what it's got is it's got the name, the what it's for, side effects, and just a whole slew of stuff that's tied to these drugs. Now, again, you may not be a doctor and you may not you may not actually know, all this stuff, but what this will do is if you get into a situation where you run across some drugs and you're not sure what they are, you're not sure if they're going to be beneficial, you can open this up and look them up and maybe at the very least learn what they're for, right? And learn if you need to get rid of them or if they might be beneficial or whatever. And I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not saying use this as medical advice. What I'm saying is in a last-ditch emergency situation where lives may depend on it, it's a good reference. Another way to get good material for your library, the internet. Now, we've got a video in the pipeline where Yoda talks about Jerry's book. And Jerry's book is a 3-ring binder that one of our acquaintances made just through the years, and he just printed off stuff off the internet, categorized it, and stuck it in a big thick 3-ring binder. You can do stuff like that. Now here's a book. This is actually a published version. This is Where There Are No Doctors. All right? If we found this at I think we got this at a Bartertown one year for dirt cheap. Maybe Mother Earth News. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. But this comes in a PDF format, and you can find it. And there's a couple of other books that are companion books to it. There's Where There's No Doctor, Where There's No Dentist, and Where There's No Midwife. And you can get these, and I've got those in PDF form. And my goal is, and you can print them off for free. They're not copyrighted. And in fact, it says right there in the preface that go ahead and print them off if you want. My goal was to take them to like a Kinko's or Office Depot and have them printed off professionally, put them spiral bound, and stick them in the library. And like I said, we found this one and just grabbed it up because it was such a good find. And it is. It's literally tells you what to do if there's no doctors involved. The guys that wrote this were doing work in the mountains of Peru and Colombia. I think Colombia, but they were up where there's like literally no public health system. So it's a good way to get it. Find that stuff online that you like and save it, and then do it. Print it off at a later date. I've got a hard drive that's full of PDFs that I found online and articles that I found online that I thought would be useful. Now, speaking of electronic data, what's the word I'm looking for? Electronic material. There's no guarantee that it's going to be around forever. If we talk about EMPs, what happens if the grid goes down, you don't have electricity, you can't pull up your Kindle reader, you can't fire up your laptop. Hopefully we've done things in the past to take that into account so that if that does happen, that we've got the ability to still use that material. But there's no guarantee that it's going to be there. Your books, as long as you've got your house and everything, you've got your books, and you can pull them and use them. So there we go. I think I've kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about. So we covered the reason why we want a library. We covered the reason or how to go about figuring what you want in your library. And oh, there's something else, something I didn't mention when you're talking about that. I said it all depends on what you want, and it may seem really silly to some people. All right, the books that you've got in here. We've got a book. Here it is. We've got this book in the historical section. It's the Howard Pierce Porcelain Collection. This book does us absolutely zero good as far as practicality goes. Seriously. In the event of something happening, that book does absolutely nothing for us but give us something to read. It holds sentimental value to Yoda because her grandmother was personal friends with Howard Pierce, and Angela remembers as a child going over to his place and seeing his sculpting studio. He did some really beautiful work too. We've got a couple of pieces that he made using ash from Mount St. Helens back in the 80s, which are really good. So yeah, you know, they don't hold any practical purpose. I've got that they'll eventually go back on the shelves. I've got my collection of Savage Tales, which was a comic back in the 80s that I was into. There were only like 8 issues or something like that. But it was I got it for the artwork and the stories, and I just keep it because it's one of those things that I enjoy going back to from time to time. You know, so they don't have to be 100% practical. The books that go in your library, you know, because let's face it, if you're out on a rural homestead, you're isolated, or we're in a collapse situation, we're going to want entertainment. And, you know, reading is entertainment to me. You know, I'm an avid reader, and I'd like to say that I've read every single book on this shelf, or that's going to be on this shelf, but I can't say that just because I don't have enough time. We talked about that. We talked about how to go about vetting books, figuring out which books you want on your library, because we don't want a lot of books on there taking up space that aren't really good or we won't use, right? You know, another way that I didn't mention on getting books is the whole leave a book, take a book program. You know, that you can do it at work, where you set up a bookshelf at work and you take your books in there, and the whole concept is if you take a book off the bookshelf, you leave a book. So it's a good way to purge your bookshelves from time to time. Take these books and put them in there, and you might find some really good books. And then they've got, I don't know if you've seen them, but they set up these little weatherproof boxes, and they're like libraries by the side of the road, and people can walk up, open it up, see if there's a book in there they want. They take it, and people leave books in there. Great way to be exposed to different books, and you may come across some gems, you know. And speaking of gems, you know, go out there and look for those unicorns, man. My unicorn in books is there's a book called When Civility Fails, and the last time I was looking for it, it was like $200 online. It was published back in the mid to late 90s, and it was on a very limited run, and it was not that expensive whenever it was first published. But now it's up there. So my unicorn is to find a good copy of that at a reasonable price. You know, so go out there and look for them that way. Go to used bookstores, do all that stuff. That's a good way to do it. That's about it for building your library. I'm sure that somebody out there is going to have different ideas, something that I didn't touch on, or something that they might want to elaborate on. Go ahead and leave a comment below. Go ahead and share what you've got with people, and let's see if we can't flesh this out and use the community to make it an even better topic. If you like this material, go ahead and hit the notification bell, because I'm gonna try to do one full spectrum preparedness video a week. Not going to promise it's going to happen every week, but I'm going to try to. They seem to be kind of popular with people, and I like the fact that people are enjoying them. If you did like the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Let YouTube know that you found it enjoyable, and let's see if we can't get it spread out to more and more people, right? That's about it. Got to get ready for going to the JOB. You guys, I want you to go get ready for living a life done free, okay? Take care.
Thanks, Milo.